Imagine a civilization so advanced that its streets were perfectly aligned, its homes had private bathrooms, and its people traded with lands thousands of miles away, all without kings, armies, or monumental temples. Welcome to the world of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the most mysterious and brilliant societies in human history. For centuries, their cities thrived along the great rivers of South Asia, leaving behind a legacy of engineering, art, and harmony that still amazes historians today. And yet, for thousands of years, their story was almost forgotten. Until now. In this series, we'll journey through their rise, their innovations, and the secrets they left behind, uncovering lessons about community, sustainability, and ingenuity that remain relevant today. So, if you've ever wondered how one of the earliest civilizations built cities ahead of their time, stay with us, because this story will change the way you see history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's dive into the lost world of the Indus Valley together. Long before the pyramids of Egypt reached for the heavens and before the ziggurats of Mesopotamia towered above their plains, a quiet miracle was unfolding along the fertile banks of a great river. This was the Indus, a lifeline cutting through what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwestern India. Here, around 5,000 years ago, humanity learned something extraordinary: how to build harmony between people, nature, and design. The Indus Valley Civilization did not rise through conquest or empire. It was born out of water, earth, and rhythm, the annual pulse of monsoons that flooded the valleys and renewed the soil. For centuries, the rains sculpted the land, carving deep channels and feeding a network of rivers. It was in this balance between abundance and challenge that one of the world's earliest urban civilizations emerged. The first settlers arrived as small communities of farmers and herders. They cultivated wheat, barley, and peas, tamed cattle and buffalo, and learned to store their surplus grain in mud brick granaries. Slowly, villages grew into towns, and towns became cities. Around them rose the faint hum of a new way of life, organized, cooperative, and astonishingly advanced for its time. Archaeologists would later uncover names like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, two of the most famous cities of this mysterious culture. But in their time, these names meant something far greater than dusty ruins. They were living, breathing cities filled with people who bathed in public pools, traded fine beads, and lived in brick houses aligned with mathematical precision. What made the Indus Valley people unique was their remarkable sense of order. Streets ran in straight lines, often at right angles, dividing neighborhoods like a giant chessboard. Houses were built from standardized baked bricks, a detail that suggests not only craftsmanship but shared regulation, as if some early form of city planning had already taken root. Beneath the streets ran an intricate drainage system, one so advanced that it would not be matched again for thousands of years. Every home had access to running water and even private bathrooms that connected to covered drains, a vision of cleanliness and public health centuries ahead of its age. Unlike the kingdoms of Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley left behind no grand temples or monuments to individual rulers, no statues of kings, no carved lists of battles, no tales of gods demanding obedience. Instead, what survives tells a different story, one of community, equality, and shared prosperity. In the marketplace, traders weighed goods with uniform stone weights, ensuring fairness. In workshops, craftsmen shaped copper, bronze, and terracotta into tools, ornaments, and toys. Clay seals bearing intricate animal designs, unicorns, bulls, elephants, were used to mark ownership or record transactions. These seals are among the most captivating relics of the civilization, etched with symbols of an undeciphered script that continues to puzzle scholars to this day. Who were these people who built such order without kings? What did they believe? What language did they speak? These questions remain some of the greatest mysteries in archaeology. Yet the evidence they left behind whispers a powerful truth. They valued balance between human ambition and nature's rhythm, between trade and community, between technology and simplicity. Life in the Indus Valley revolved around its rivers. The Indus, along with its tributaries like the Ravi and Saraswati, provided water for crops and transport for trade. The people learned to adapt to the monsoon's unpredictable moods. They built elevated homes to withstand floods, designed reservoirs to collect rain, and farmed in harmony with the changing seasons. Every design choice, from their brick sizes to the layout of their cities, reflected an intimate understanding of the natural world. Archaeologists often describe the Indus Valley Civilization as peaceful for good reason. Across hundreds of excavation sites, there's little sign of warfare. No armies, no fortresses, no weapons meant for conquest. Instead, the artifacts speak of trade, agriculture, art, and civic life. It was a civilization that flourished not by the sword, but by cooperation. At the heart of their cities lay something remarkable: the great bath of Mohenjo-daro. Built of carefully fitted bricks and sealed with bitumen to make it waterproof, this massive pool may have been used for ritual cleansing. It stood as both a spiritual and communal center, where water symbolized purity, renewal, and connection. Imagine the sight: men and women stepping down the stone steps into cool, sacred waters under the golden light of dawn. It was here, in these moments of stillness, that the Indus people perhaps found their meaning. Not in towering monuments to power, but in the simple act of living well together. Their civilization thrived for centuries, quietly perfecting urban life at a time when most of the world still wandered in tribes. And yet, for millennia, their story was forgotten. The desert winds covered their cities, the rivers shifted their courses, and the memory of their brilliance faded into myth. It wasn't until the early 20th century that British archaeologists, digging along the ancient mounds of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, uncovered the baked bricks, the seals, and the skeleton of an entire lost world. The discovery changed everything. History books had long claimed that civilization began only in Egypt and Mesopotamia, but the Indus Valley proved otherwise, that another people, equally sophisticated, had risen and thrived without kings, wars, or grand empires. They were the silent architects of human progress, whose wisdom in balance and sustainability still speaks to us today. As the sun sets over the ancient Indus, the wind carries whispers of their legacy, a reminder that greatness need not shout to be remembered. When we step into the cities of the Indus Valley, we step into order itself. Everything, from the width of the streets to the size of the bricks, followed an unseen logic. It was as if the people of this ancient civilization had agreed upon an unspoken code, that harmony, not chaos, would be the foundation of their world. The Indus Valley Civilization reached its classical period between the years of roughly 2600 and 1900 before the Common Era. This was the golden age of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, two sister cities that shone like twin jewels along the riverbanks. They were not the only ones. Dozens of smaller towns, each with similar planning and design, stretched across the valley like a network of living veins, pulsing with trade, craft, and culture. To walk through Mohenjo-daro in its prime would have been to witness a marvel. Wide, straight streets crossed at perfect right angles. Houses rose 2 or sometimes 3 stories high, each built from the same standardized baked bricks. These were not random dwellings thrown together over time. They were carefully planned homes arranged around courtyards, with staircases, wells, and ventilation designed to catch the river breeze. And beneath this perfect order flowed one of the most extraordinary systems of the ancient world: the drainage network. Each house connected to covered sewers that ran under the streets, carrying wastewater away from the living areas. Manholes and inspection shafts were installed at regular intervals for cleaning. Even modern engineers marvel at this achievement, for such sanitation systems would not appear again in human history for thousands of years. It is easy to forget that this civilization existed at the same time as the pyramids of Egypt. While pharaohs built tombs to preserve their power, the people of the Indus Valley built cities to preserve their well-being. Their greatness was not displayed through towering monuments, but through everyday perfection. Streets that drained properly, homes that stayed cool, and cities that rarely fell into disrepair. Public life centered around the citadel, a raised area of each city that likely served as a center for governance, storage, or communal gathering. Here, granaries held vast quantities of grain, neatly stored and carefully managed. Wells and reservoirs ensured water even during dry seasons. There were large public baths, workshops for craftsmen, and open courtyards for markets. Below the citadel lay the lower city, where most people lived and worked. The uniformity in house size and design has long fascinated historians. There is little sign of extreme wealth or poverty. This balance has led many to believe that the Indus Valley was a remarkably egalitarian society, one where cooperation mattered more than hierarchy. The people themselves were skilled artisans. They shaped copper into tools, bronze into weapons for hunting, and gold into jewelry. Potters spun fine, painted ceramics decorated with graceful black designs. Jewelers crafted beads from carnelian, lapis lazuli, and agate, materials that sometimes came from faraway lands. In small workshops, they carved seals bearing images of animals both real and mythical: bulls, elephants, tigers, and the mysterious unicorn that appears again and again in their art. These seals were stamped onto clay to mark goods, much like merchants today use logos or trademarks. Each seal also carried a short sequence of symbols, a form of writing still undeciphered. The Indus script remains one of the greatest linguistic mysteries in the world. With no Rosetta Stone to guide translation, the meaning of those tiny marks continues to elude even the brightest scholars. But we can be sure of one thing: they represented a system of communication, a shared understanding among people who valued order and record-keeping. Trade was the heartbeat of their economy. From the coasts of Gujarat, ships sailed to the distant cities of Mesopotamia. There, Sumerian tablets mention a mysterious land called Meluha, believed to be the Indus region, known for its precious woods, ivory, and gemstones. In return, the people of the Indus imported silver, tin, and luxury items. Caravans moved across deserts, rivers carried goods downstream, and bustling marketplaces filled the cities with sounds of barter and laughter. Yet, amidst this complex network of trade and life, one striking fact stands out. There is no evidence of armies or warfare, no weapons of mass conflict, no fortresses designed for siege. This was a civilization held together not by force, but by cooperation and shared values. Their real power lay in their collective discipline, a society so organized that it functioned like a living machine. Religion, too, seemed woven into daily life rather than separate from it. Terracotta figurines of a mother goddess suggest reverence for fertility and nature. Some seals depict horned figures seated in meditative poses, perhaps early forms of deities that would later evolve in the Indian subcontinent's spiritual traditions. Water, so vital to their survival, was sacred, a symbol of renewal and purity. When night fell over Mohenjo-daro, oil lamps flickered in every window, and the scent of grain and earth filled the air. The streets, quiet and clean, reflected a society that had mastered its environment without dominating it. The Indus Valley Civilization, at its height, may have supported over 5 million people, yet it left no single ruler's name, no written decree carved into stone. Its strength came from the people themselves, united in purpose and respect for order. As centuries passed, this harmony began to strain under forces they could not control: rivers that changed course, floods that swallowed fields, and climates that grew harsher. The perfect order they had built would soon face its greatest test, but that is a story for another time. Civilizations do not grow in isolation. They breathe, connect, and exchange. Not just goods, but ideas, beliefs, and technologies. The Indus Valley Civilization, though peaceful and self-sustaining, was no exception. Long before the Silk Road, long before coins and caravans of empires, the Indus people had already built the earliest bridges of global trade. By the middle of the 3rd millennium before the Common Era, their merchants had begun to move far beyond the fertile plains of the Indus River. From bustling port cities like Lothal and Dholavira, ships with broad wooden hulls and high prows set sail into the Arabian Sea. The winds carried them across the ocean to the shores of Mesopotamia, where the people of Sumer and Akkad recorded in cuneiform tablets their dealings with a mysterious land they called Meluha. In these ancient texts, Meluha was described as a place of great wealth, a distant and exotic region from which came fine woods, ivory, gold, pearls, and beautiful red carnelian beads. The people of Mesopotamia longed for these treasures. They traded in return with silver, wool, and precious metals. It was a meeting of two worlds, one that built ziggurats under blazing suns, and one that built silent, ordered cities by the river's song. Archaeologists have found Mesopotamian seals in the ruins of the Indus cities, and Indus-style beads and weights in the ancient layers of Ur and Sumer. These are the footprints of connection, evidence of a trade network that stretched over thousands of kilometers. Imagine the scenes at the ports of Lothal. Sailors shouting over the wind, ships loaded with jars of grain, pottery, and precious stones, bound for lands beyond the horizon. Lothal, one of the most remarkable Harappan cities, contained what many historians believe to be one of the world's first known docks, a large basin connected to a river channel, designed to anchor ships safely from the tides. The engineering precision was astonishing. The dock's walls were built of baked bricks, and its design allowed vessels to rise and fall with the water level, suggesting that the Indus people deeply understood the science of tides. Their trade routes were not limited to the sea. Across deserts and mountain passes, caravans carried goods north toward Central Asia and east toward the Ganges Plains. Copper from Rajasthan, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and turquoise from Iran all found their way into Indus workshops. These materials were shaped into jewelry, ornaments, and tools that reflected not only artistry but also a deep sense of beauty and balance. Through these routes, the Indus people encountered more than materials. They exchanged ideas, technologies, symbols, and possibly even beliefs. While no written correspondence survives, the similarities between Mesopotamian and Indus seals, weights, and measurement systems hint at mutual influence. It is possible that these early interactions helped shape shared traditions of trade law and cultural respect that would echo across later civilizations. But, unlike many ancient cultures that sought to expand through conquest, the Indus people expanded through cooperation. They never marched to dominate foreign lands, nor did they impose their culture on others. Their strength lay in subtlety, in trade, craftsmanship, and mutual benefit. Religion, too, may have crossed these borders in gentle waves. Seals from the Indus Valley show motifs that some scholars link to later South Asian spiritual concepts. Figures seated in meditative poses, surrounded by animals, symbolizing unity with nature. Such images might have inspired or influenced later depictions of deities in regions far beyond their homeland. Inside the Indus cities, the signs of prosperity were visible everywhere. Warehouses stored goods ready for export. Bead-making workshops produced jewelry so finely crafted that even under modern microscopes, the drill holes are perfectly symmetrical. Pottery bore marks of international style, some shapes resembling those found in distant Mesopotamia, showing that cultural exchange was not a one-way street. And through it all, the Indus people remained devoted to balance. They traded widely but never lost their identity. They absorbed new influences, but kept their calm rhythm of life. They welcomed the world's riches, yet refused to worship wealth itself. Their philosophy seemed simple. Prosperity meant nothing without harmony. But the world beyond the Indus was changing. To the west, the Akkadian Empire rose and fell, leaving behind waves of political upheaval that disrupted trade. In Mesopotamia, floods, wars, and shifting powers made routes uncertain. The once steady flow of goods between Meluhha and Sumer began to fade. At home, too, the great rivers were beginning to betray them. The mighty Saraswati, believed to have flowed parallel to the Indus, started drying up. The monsoons that had nourished the land for centuries grew weaker and less predictable. Trade networks that had once thrived began to wither as routes became harder to travel. Still, even in the face of change, the spirit of the Indus Valley endured. Their openness to the world, their willingness to exchange and adapt, would later influence generations of cultures that arose after them. The idea that different peoples could coexist, trade, and learn from one another was one of their most enduring legacies. The Indus Valley Civilization, through its silent bridges across land and sea, helped lay the foundations for the global world that would follow. They were among the first to prove that cooperation could achieve what conquest could not. There are moments in human history when a civilization reaches perfect balance, when knowledge, innovation, and culture all move in harmony. For the Indus Valley Civilization, this golden moment arrived around 2,500 years before the Common Era. It was an age not of conquest or empire, but of creation, a quiet, steady expansion of ingenuity that touched every part of life. At its height, the Indus Valley stretched over an area larger than any other ancient civilization of its time, greater even than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. From the mountains of Baluchistan to the coasts of Gujarat, from the plains of Punjab to the deserts of Rajasthan, hundreds of settlements flourished. Each city, large or small, seemed to follow the same rhythm. Brick by brick, street by street, all bound by the same invisible blueprint. This was no coincidence. It was the result of a sophisticated system of planning and governance. Though we still do not know what kind of leadership existed, no palaces, no royal tombs, no written decrees have ever been found. There must have been shared standards that united them. Their civilization functioned like a great orchestra without a conductor, guided by mutual understanding and respect for order. In this age of expansion, the Indus people perfected the art of urban engineering. Each new city mirrored the principles of the great ones: Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, and Lothal. The streets were carefully aligned along cardinal directions, suggesting a knowledge of astronomy. Houses had standardized bricks, built with ratios of 1 to 2 to 4, a precision that reveals mathematical discipline. Their drainage systems, already admired in earlier centuries, became even more advanced. Covered drains ran beneath every street, connecting homes, wells, and baths in a seamless network. In some places, archaeologists have discovered inspection holes and brick chambers designed for maintenance, an indication that the people thought generations ahead. They did not merely build for themselves, but for those who would come after. Beyond the cities, agriculture thrived like never before. Farmers learned to harness the power of the monsoon. They grew wheat, barley, sesame, and peas, and may have been among the first to cultivate cotton, a material that would later clothe empires. Sophisticated irrigation systems ensured that even in dry years, their crops would survive. Technology advanced hand in hand with agriculture. Bronze tools became sharper, pottery more refined, and beads more intricate. The people experimented with new alloys, producing stronger metals for tools and ornaments. In workshops, artisans shaped gold into delicate jewelry, carved ivory into combs and figurines, and spun fine cloth that may have been traded across distant seas. The city of Dholavira, discovered deep in the arid lands of Gujarat, stands as a testament to their architectural genius. Built between two seasonal streams, it featured massive reservoirs and stone channels that collected rainwater during monsoons. The city's design followed a clear pattern: an upper citadel for administration, a middle town for elite families, and a lower town for common citizens. The entire city was encircled by walls, not for defense but likely to manage floods and control access. Even more astonishing was their use of measurement. Archaeologists have found rulers made of ivory with precise divisions, some accurate to less than 2 millimeters. Weights made of chert stone, carefully polished into cube shapes, were standardized across cities. Whether one traded in Harappa or Lothal, the units of measure were the same. Such consistency points to a centralized system of economic regulation, perhaps the earliest example of a civil code based on equality and trust. The Indus people were not only builders and traders, they were thinkers. Though their script remains undeciphered, their symbols and seals reveal deep layers of meaning. Many feature animals, bulls, elephants, and unicorns, surrounded by mysterious characters. These symbols may have represented names, professions, or spiritual beliefs. Some scholars suggest that they recorded ownership, others that they told stories or prayers. Whatever their purpose, they show that the Indus mind valued both logic and imagination. Culturally, this was a time of peace and stability. Art flourished in everyday life. Small terracotta figurines of dancers and musicians have been found, their poses full of movement and grace. One famous artifact, known as the Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-daro, captures this spirit perfectly. A young woman standing with one hand on her hip, confident and alive, cast in bronze 5,000 years ago. Her expression seems to whisper of a civilization that celebrated both discipline and freedom. Trade reached its peak during this period. Goods flowed across land and sea, textiles, gemstones, and crafted ornaments leaving the ports of Lothal, bound for faraway kingdoms. Within the cities, marketplaces thrived with the sound of barter and laughter. The economy was dynamic yet balanced, supported by agriculture, craftsmanship, and long-distance exchange. What made this era truly extraordinary was the absence of visible oppression. While other civilizations rose through power and hierarchy, the Indus Valley rose through cooperation. There were no grand tombs for rulers, no temples demanding tribute. Instead, their greatness lay in shared progress, in the quiet dignity of people working together to sustain life in harmony with the earth. This was the peak of the Indus Valley Civilization, a time when human potential met balance and creativity walked hand in hand with order, but nature, as always, changes its course. The rivers that had given life to this civilization began to shift. The monsoons weakened, and fertile lands turned to dust. The stage was being set for the civilization's most mysterious chapter, not its rise, but its slow, silent decline. Every great civilization carries within it the seeds of change. For the Indus Valley people, that change did not come suddenly or violently. There were no armies at the gates, no fires of conquest sweeping across their cities. Instead, the end arrived like a whisper, a gradual unraveling of balance that had once held their world together. By around 1900 years before the Common Era, the signs of decline began to appear. The once bustling streets of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro grew quieter. Granaries, once filled with grain, stood empty. The carefully maintained drains became clogged with silt. Brick houses were abandoned, some dismantled for their materials. It was as if the rhythm that had guided the civilization for centuries had slowed, and finally faded. What could have caused such a peaceful and organized society to crumble? The truth remains uncertain, hidden beneath layers of dust and time, but the clues tell a story not of war, but of nature's slow transformation and humanity's struggle to adapt. The first and perhaps most powerful force of change was the rivers themselves. The Indus and its tributaries had long been the lifeblood of the civilization. They brought fertile soil, water for crops, and routes for trade. Yet, over time, these rivers began to shift. The mighty Saraswati, a river mentioned in later Indian traditions, is believed to have dried up completely. Geological studies suggest that earthquakes or changes in rainfall may have altered its course, leaving vast regions barren. Without stable rivers, agriculture faltered. The monsoons, once regular and generous, grew erratic. Years of flood would be followed by years of drought. The soil, exhausted from centuries of farming, could no longer yield the same abundance. As harvests declined, so did the surplus that had sustained urban life. The cities, designed for precision and order, were not built to withstand chaos. Drainage systems clogged with debris, and wells dried up. The same infrastructure that once symbolized their brilliance became a burden when maintenance failed. Slowly, people began to leave. They moved eastward, following the promise of better water and more fertile land along the Ganges plains. Trade networks also suffered. To the west, Mesopotamia, one of their main trading partners, was facing its own crises: wars, invasions, and political collapse. The sea routes that once carried carnelian beads and cotton cloth to distant shores grew quiet. Without external trade, local economies weakened. The craftsmen, the traders, the builders, all the professions that had defined the cities, lost their purpose. And yet, even in decline, the Indus people did not descend into chaos. Excavations reveal no signs of large-scale violence or destruction. The walls of their cities were not burned, their temples not looted. Instead, their departure seems almost deliberate, a migration guided by necessity rather than fear. It was as if they accepted the will of nature, choosing to move rather than resist. Some scholars suggest that internal changes may have played a part. As the climate grew harsher, social systems may have strained under pressure. Communities that once cooperated effortlessly might have struggled to manage dwindling resources. The equality that had defined their cities could have fractured, creating divisions that weakened the fabric of unity. Others believe that the drying of the rivers forced smaller communities to become more self-reliant, breaking the larger network of shared governance that had once bound the civilization together. Without trade and communication, the once unified culture splintered into regional variations, each adapting in its own way to survival. But even as cities emptied, life did not end. People carried with them their knowledge, their techniques of farming, their methods of building, their respect for water and balance. In this way, the spirit of the Indus Valley did not die, it simply transformed. The seeds of its wisdom would later grow in the emerging cultures of the Indian subcontinent. When British archaeologists rediscovered the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in the early 20th century, they were struck by how intact the cities were. Streets still aligned, bricks still in place, wells still standing. It was as if their inhabitants had simply stepped away for a moment, leaving behind the skeleton of a once-living organism. The silence of these cities speaks louder than any ruin of war. It tells of a civilization that lived in harmony, declined with dignity, and vanished without violence. Their disappearance remains one of history's greatest mysteries. A quiet reminder that even the most advanced societies are at the mercy of nature as changing tides. Today, scientists continue to uncover new evidence. Satellite images reveal the dry courses of ancient rivers beneath the sands of Punjab and Haryana. Core samples from the soil show patterns of climate change that match the timeline of their decline. Piece by piece, the mystery becomes clearer. Not a tale of collapse, but of transformation. Perhaps the most profound lesson the Indus Valley leaves us is this: civilizations do not truly die when their cities fall silent. They endure in the ideas, values, and traditions they pass on. The Indus people taught humanity that progress need not come through war or conquest, that order, cooperation, and respect for the environment can sustain greatness longer than any empire built on force. Their decline was not an end, but a transition, from the age of cities to the age of new beginnings. When a great civilization fades, It rarely vanishes without a trace. The Indus Valley Civilization, known for its cities, engineers, and harmony, may have dissolved from sight, but its essence lingered, quietly shaping the future of South Asia. Like the echo of a song long ended, its melody still vibrated beneath the surface of history. As the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro declined, people began to scatter. They did not disappear into the void. They carried their knowledge, habits, and symbols wherever they went. The farmers moved eastward, settling near the Ganges River, where the soil was rich and the water plentiful. The craftsmen, traders, and builders took with them their skills in pottery, metallurgy, and urban design. Slowly, from these fragments, a new world began to rise. At first, the transition was subtle. Villages replaced cities. The monumental brick structures gave way to simpler homes made of mud and thatch. Yet within these humbler settlements lay the memory of a once great order. The well-planned streets, the standardized weights, the ritual purity of water. All these continued, reshaped by new environments and beliefs. One of the most enduring legacies of the Indus people was their relationship with water. To them, water was more than survival. It was sacred balance. Every city had wells, baths, and drains. Every home had access to clean water. This reverence carried forward into later Indian traditions, where rivers like the Ganges became holy, and rituals of bathing were linked to spiritual purification. The ancient idea that purity of the soul was tied to cleanliness of the body began here, in the silent stone pools of Mohenjo-daro. Their language, though still undeciphered, may also have left its mark. Some linguists believe traces of the Indus script survive in the early Dravidian languages spoken in southern India today. If this is true, then the voice of the Indus still whispers through the tongues of millions, a living remnant of a civilization thought lost. Art and symbolism, too, endured. The famous Pashupati seal, depicting a horned figure surrounded by animals, may have influenced later depictions of Shiva, the lord of beasts, in Hindu mythology. The female figurines found across Indus sites, symbols of fertility and renewal, echo through later worship of goddesses like Shakti and Parvati. What began as local symbols of life and nature may have evolved into some of the most enduring spiritual traditions on earth. Even their architecture planted seeds that would bloom centuries later. The alignment of homes, the use of courtyards for light and ventilation, the standardization of bricks, these principles persisted through generations of Indian building practices. The idea that a settlement should be designed for harmony, not hierarchy, continued to shape how communities grew. But the greatest echo of all was their worldview, the belief in balance over dominance, cooperation over conflict. Unlike the civilizations of Mesopotamia or Egypt, the Indus people built no grand temples or statues of kings. Their cities showed equality, their lives mutual respect. Even as the political and cultural centers shifted eastward, this spirit of balance remained. In later Indian philosophy, we find the same reverence for cosmic order, Rita, and the pursuit of harmony between man and nature. Archaeologists have long debated how much of later Indian culture owes its foundation to the Indus Valley. Some argue that the Vedic peoples who arrived from the northwest brought entirely new traditions. Others see continuity, not replacement, but transformation. The truth may lie between, an interweaving of two legacies, each enriching the other. Imagine the descendants of the Indus people teaching newcomers how to irrigate crops, how to fire bricks, how to align settlements with the stars. In exchange, they learned new languages, rituals, and songs. Over centuries, these exchanges formed a new civilization, one that would eventually give rise to the great kingdoms and philosophies of classical India. Modern science continues to uncover these connections. DNA studies suggest that the genetic heritage of the Indus people survives in many South Asian populations today. Their blood, quite literally, flows in the veins of millions. Their story is not just ancient history, It is a living thread woven into modern identity. In this sense, the Indus Valley did not fall. It evolved. Its legacy was absorbed, reimagined, and reborn in forms the original builders could never have foreseen. From their silent bricks grew the seeds of new languages, new beliefs, new worlds. Today, as we stand among the ruins of Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, we are not simply looking at the remains of a lost people. We are standing in the foundation of human progress, the first blueprint for organized urban life, sustainable living, and peaceful coexistence. The lesson they leave us is timeless, that civilization is not measured by the height of its monuments, but by the harmony of its people, not by conquest, but by compassion, not by how long it endures, but by what it passes on. And so, even as the stones of the Indus cities crumble beneath the weight of centuries, their spirit endures. In every drop of sacred water, every prayer for balance, and every dream of a just society. For thousands of years, the Indus Valley Civilization lay silent beneath layers of earth and sand, its streets buried, its secrets hidden. It was a world forgotten, a people erased from memory, until the early 20th century, when British archaeologists began to uncover what had been lost. The discovery of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro was not just a revelation of old bricks and broken pottery, it was the unveiling of a civilization that reshaped our understanding of human history. Before these excavations, textbooks often told a simple story. Civilization began in Mesopotamia and Egypt, and the rest of the world followed. But as the mounds of the Indus Valley were unearthed, it became clear that human ingenuity had flourished elsewhere, independently and simultaneously. The cities they discovered were not primitive settlements. They were thriving, meticulously planned urban centers. Grid streets, standardized bricks, sophisticated drainage, these were hallmarks of a civilization that rivaled any in the ancient world. The discovery challenged assumptions about governance, society, and urban life. There were no massive temples, no palaces of kings, no inscriptions boasting conquest. Instead, the evidence pointed to a society that prized equality, cooperation, and order. It forced historians to ask, could a civilization achieve greatness without hierarchy, without rulers commanding armies and monuments? The Indus Valley said yes. Modern archaeology has revealed more than just city layouts. Excavations uncovered artifacts that speak of daily life, trade, and culture. Beads of carnelian and agate, finely crafted jewelry, pottery decorated with delicate patterns, and seals etched with mysterious symbols. All these items tell us that the people of the Indus Valley were skilled artisans, traders, and thinkers. Their script, though still undeciphered, hints at a system of record-keeping and communication that we are only beginning to understand. Trade networks became another symbol of their legacy. The Indus people had connected with Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and possibly even regions further east. Archaeological finds of Indus-style weights, beads, and seals in distant lands demonstrate that their influence traveled far beyond their river valleys. They were early pioneers of globalization, centuries before the term existed. Yet perhaps the most profound legacy of the Indus Valley is its philosophy of life. Unlike many contemporary civilizations, theirs was not built on dominance or conquest. It was built on careful planning, community collaboration, and a deep understanding of the environment. Their cities worked because their people worked together, respecting both each other and the rivers that sustained them. The modern world, grappling with urbanization, sanitation, and sustainability, finds lessons in these ancient streets. The rediscovery of the Indus Valley has also sparked curiosity about human ingenuity and resilience. Scientists, engineers, and historians study the bricks, drainage systems, and urban planning, marveling at their precision. Environmental researchers examine their water management practices, seeking insights for modern, sustainable design. Linguists attempt to decode the script, hoping to hear the voices of a people long silent. Cultural echoes are everywhere. Terracotta figurines, images of dancing girls, mother goddesses, and animals continue to inspire art and literature. Symbols once etched on seals now resonate as emblems of early human creativity. Their reverence for balance, water, and community endures in traditions, festivals, and rituals across South Asia. The Indus Valley Civilization also reshapes how we think about history itself. It reminds us that human achievement is not linear or concentrated in a single region. Great ideas and innovations can emerge anywhere, sometimes quietly, sometimes forgotten, yet they leave traces that ripple through time. By rediscovering the Indus, we rediscover a richer, more diverse story of human civilization. Modern cities may rise with skyscrapers and neon lights, yet the lessons of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa remain relevant. They teach us that order is possible without oppression, that sanitation and planning are not luxuries but necessities, and that cooperation can create a society as enduring as stone. In their silence, the Indus people speak volumes about what humanity can achieve when it works in harmony, with nature, with neighbors, and with itself. As we reflect on their achievements, it becomes clear that the Indus Valley was more than a civilization of the past. It is a mirror for the present and a guide for the future. Its legacy challenges us to rethink what it means to live well together, to innovate responsibly, and to build communities that last. The rivers of the Indus Valley, once the lifeblood of a great civilization, still whisper their ancient secrets. Though the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro lie in ruins, their spirit flows through time like water in a hidden channel, shaping the land, the culture, and the imagination of generations that followed. This is the story of a legacy that never truly ended, a civilization whose lessons continue to ripple into the modern world. Long after the Indus people moved from their great urban centers, the echoes of their innovations remained. Farmers who migrated eastward carried techniques for irrigation and crop management to the fertile plains of the Ganges. Craftsmen brought their skills in bead-making, pottery, and metallurgy to new settlements. Even as the physical cities disappeared beneath sand and silt, the knowledge embedded in their daily lives persisted, guiding the development of future civilizations across South Asia. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Indus legacy is their emphasis on urban planning and sustainability. Modern archaeologists marvel at their drainage systems, standardized bricks, and organized streets, features that would not be seen again for thousands of years. Today, as cities around the world struggle with overcrowding, water management, and sanitation, engineers and urban planners study Indus techniques for inspiration. The idea that civilizations can thrive by balancing human needs with environmental stewardship, first demonstrated along the Indus River, remains profoundly relevant. Cultural traditions also carry the imprint of the Indus Valley. Terracotta figurines, mother goddesses, and animal symbols found in their cities resonate in art, ritual, and mythology throughout South Asia. The reverence for rivers, water purification, and the cyclical rhythms of nature, evident in Indus daily life, influenced spiritual practices that continue to this day. Their concepts of balance, order, and cooperation echo through philosophies, festivals, and even the architectural designs of later societies. Trade, too, is part of their enduring heritage. The Indus people were among the first to create extensive networks linking distant lands. Their ports, ships, and trading systems laid the groundwork for a culture of exchange that would later blossom in the Indian Ocean and beyond. In this sense, the Indus Valley Civilization contributed to the very idea that commerce can build bridges between peoples, long before globalization became a concept. Modern discoveries continue to deepen our understanding of this ancient world. Satellite imaging reveals the courses of long-lost rivers, showing how geography shaped the rise and fall of cities. DNA research connects the inhabitants of the Indus Valley to present-day populations, confirming that their descendants are still with us. Archaeologists uncover inscriptions, seals, and artifacts that offer glimpses into their daily lives, technology, and beliefs. Each finding reinforces a profound truth. The civilization's influence persists in ways both tangible and intangible. Yet, the most important legacy of the Indus Valley is the philosophy it embodies. Unlike many contemporary civilizations, it did not rely on war or conquest to define greatness. Its achievements came from cooperation, careful planning, and harmony with the natural world. The lesson it offers is timeless. Societies endure not by domination, but by balance, foresight, and the collective well-being of their people. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, climate change, urbanization, and social inequality, the Indus example is strikingly relevant. Their cities were built to manage floods, to maximize resource efficiency, and to promote communal life. Their culture valued sustainable agriculture, equitable trade, and the careful use of natural resources. The question for modern society is simple. Can we learn from the wisdom of the past to build a future that respects both humanity and the planet? Walking among the ruins today, it is easy to imagine the voices of the Indus people, the laughter of children playing in courtyards, the rhythmic hammering of craftsmen shaping bronze, the flowing water of public baths, and the quiet hum of marketplaces alive with trade. Though thousands of years have passed, these echoes remind us that human ingenuity, compassion, and cooperation are eternal forces, just like the rivers that once nurtured this extraordinary civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization may have vanished as a political entity, yet it remains alive in spirit, knowledge, and influence. Its cities, once meticulously planned, still teach lessons in urban design. Its technologies, once innovative, inspire modern engineers. Its philosophies, once practiced quietly in everyday life, offer guidance for building societies grounded in harmony rather than conflict. In the end, the story of the Indus Valley is not one of disappearance but of resonance across time. From ancient bricks to modern settlements, from ritual practices to sustainable design, from the rhythm of rivers to the heartbeat of communities, the Indus legacy flows on. It reminds us that civilization is not measured solely by monuments or empires, but by the knowledge, values, and connections we leave behind, lessons that continue to shape the world, generation after generation. The Indus Valley may have begun as a civilization by the river, but it endures as an eternal current in human history, a quiet, lasting testament to what people can achieve when they live in balance with each other and the world around them. And so, the story of the Indus Valley Civilization reminds us that true greatness is not built on conquest or power, but on balance, wisdom, and unity. Thousands of years ago, they mastered the art of living in harmony with nature and with one another. Lessons that the modern world is only beginning to rediscover. Their cities may have fallen silent, but their ideas still flow, like the eternal rivers that once gave them life. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most fascinating chapters in human history. If this story inspired you, don't forget to leave a like, share this video with someone who loves history, and subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration into the world's forgotten civilizations. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, and remember, history isn't just about the past. It's the key to understanding who we are today. See you in the next time.